Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of the Flight Ready podcast. If you haven't caught us before, my name is MasterBen, and this is LoudGuns.
Hello.
And we like to sit down every now and again and try and bring you some content, basically what's going on in Star Citizen. So last week we spoke about is Star Citizen becoming more of an MMO RPG, slowly getting towards the goals that great Chris has set out over time. And I think we had some really, really good discussions in there, especially around the best paint skins of an Idris, which of course is vital to the progression of the game.
That is the most important bit. Undenied. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a fascinating topic in its own right. But today, instead of looking forward at what the game is becoming, let's take a look back. In episode 6, we're going to talk about 6 months. 6 months of progress, question mark, or more of a, people are going to have their own
I
opinions on
went
that.
I
So
went with exclamation marks, but it could have just as easily been question marks, couldn't it? So
yeah. It really depends on your point of view. If you're an active Spectrum user, I would love to hear your point of view on what you think of 6 months of progress. So, what we're going to basically be doing is starting off what happened 6 months ago, 4.0, a great revolution. It's undeniable, really, to what Star Citizen is, how you played it, and work all the way through up to 4.2, which has just been released into the servers. So, hot off the press, and really see what are the key fundamental things that have really changed how we play the game day to day. So I think we should pick off at the beginning. Obviously, we've got pyro and server meshing.
and as we were discussing slightly before the episode, certainly from my corner, I am no technical specialist. So
No.
so smoke and mirrors might be as well an explanation of how server meshing works. So if you're looking for a detailed explanation of the exact tech behind it, it's certainly not coming from me. Certainly
This
not.
is the wrong podcast for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But it's the. I think the key thing is it's that hurdle that they were talking about for years, and I still remember one of my friends. Everybody who plays Star Citizen has a friend who likes to just tell them it's a scam. It's tradition. So my friend who likes to tell me it's a scam, that decreased a little bit when he heard that server meshing was in fact working in some capacity. So yeah, I think not just for the CRG devs, but for the outside gaming world in general, the concept of dynamic server meshing was, can it even be done? So the fact that it was, and what was demonstrated at SitCon was, yeah, that's amazing. And ultimately for us, it just means, a lot more life in the verse, as we were touching on last episode, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just that whole thing of, I just before we hit record, I said I don't know if I even mentioned server meshing because now that it's here, we just take it for granted. The fact that you can have 700 people on a server, all in different instances. So are they technically on the same server? Once again, not a clue really, but they're vaguely close. It's just incredible, absolutely incredible. And to go from 100 people on the server, 700 people on the server, it's so noticeable in the game, and it just allows for much bigger events, much bigger spaces to actually function. And of course, along with server meshing, we did get the wonderful pyro when it came out. I mean, I certainly had some questions around what was there actually to do there. We had
Yeah.
contested zones at the start, but apart from that, was there any huge motivation to actually go to pyro?
No, I think this was the problem, wasn't it? The when CRG mentioned sandbox, I think we talked about in the last episode about how sandbox was maybe a misused word. But the sandbox to me is just the space that you have to play with. And so that sandbox got a lot bigger with the addition of Pyro. And a lot of the locations are really cool. I think the planets look fantastic. The vast majority of the planets. And are a step up versus what we've got in Stanton, in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
But then you get down to them, you see some of the locations look really cool, but then you realise that it didn't bring a whole lot of extra gameplay. And I think that was, maybe for me, sort of in particular, So at the time that 4.0 released, I wasn't playing all that much. Just some IRL stuff caught up with me. But when I did log in, I was almost like, am I missing that much? Because the content hadn't really caught up with all the additional space to put it in. The times I did log in during that period, I was just like, it's still kind of the same stuff. It's just in a different, somewhat more colourful area with less consequences for getting into a bit of PvP, which is all fine by me, but it didn't seem to move the gameplay side of things forward much, 4.0. The
No,
one thing I
definitely.
will touch on server meshing, though, if we go back there quickly, 30Ks, or the lack
Yeah.
thereof, that that to me is like just kind of mind blowing when you sort of think that was actually only the last 6 months or so.
Mm.
But now that they are gone, you barely even remember that they existed as a
Yeah.
thing. And I think we gradually went through that progression, didn't we? Where it was like a 30k means you have just lost everything. Like I remember cargo hauling being like the thing that you only did if you were just super loaded. So it was like, look at how rich I am. I can risk money trading. I can fill my
It
ship
could
up
all
with
go to zero.
like a million credits of cargo, and if I have 30k, I just used to be a white knuckle ride when you used to deliver like your mined goods in a C2. But then we got the 30k happens, but then you get the crash recovery. So at least then it was that reduction of losing all your stuff. But now just, time to time you get those server errors. They are a bit annoying. But then things do snap back to life. And that, in terms of playability, is just huge.
Yeah.
Absolutely huge.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that will be a topic I think we're going to touch on a few times of just how playability has changed so much. There's so much more content, of course. So the next big thing that happened in 4.0 would be the supply or die events and the save Stanton events. The first events that really brought in faction-based gameplay into Star Citizen, where there was a genuine reason to have to pick a side. I know they tried this in the Xeno threats a few years ago, where you could sort of role play as the bad guys, but it never really worked. Xenothreat was meant to be a PvE event, and I could fully understand why that one was probably not the most popular thing in the world. But Save Stanton was really interesting because it was the first time where you had to pick what rewards you're going to receive, and were locking yourself out of other rewards. So in
Yeah.
this case, we had ship skins. So it was either red, purple, or I want to say blue. I want to say blue.
These are the ones, unfortunately, that I missed with my hiatus. So they do not appear on my account, unfortunately, which is
Mm,
it's a bit sad, but it's also good because it's sort of like you're not going to get every reward, right? If you are a fairly sort of if playing SC isn't the only thing you do in your time. If you've got other things, you're going to miss the occasional bit.
yeah,
Naturally, I do
yeah,
really like that for the people who were playing then. I really hope those do stay as kind of rewards that they get that I can't go back and get. Because there's nothing wrong with a little jealousy in a video game. Just a little bit of like, oh, I wish I could have that paint. Well, you can't. Oh well. I'm gonna green eye you a little bit with your cool paint.
yeah. No, definitely. And once again, with persistence actually functioning so much better, you suddenly actually had a vague tradable commodity. In the fact that you couldn't come back and get these paints. It's one of
Mhm.
my favorite things of when they release a ship to concept. They typically, not always, but typically have sold a paint that goes with that ship by the concept, and it will usually never be sold again. And it's a nice way of going, okay, cool. You back the ship, everyone can get it, but actually maybe you've got something a bit rarer to enjoy to style it out.
There is that element with the best in show paints, like
Yeah,
that
yeah.
that 2949 cutlass that will never leave my account. The reason I will always have a cutty black. Love that paint.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. So I know somewhere there's a white eclipse. I really want that white eclipse paint, but maybe it's on tradable cubs. Anyway, talking about ships that came into the game and ships that are in there, we had the F7 series, F7 Mark II series coming in. We had the Misk Fortune coming in and the Misk Guardian coming in. So it was a real wave of actual new content from what you can actually fly in the game. This was in a time where heavy fighters were incredibly dominant. So bringing in a Guardian was absolutely awesome. I think the Guardian's been a really, really cool ship. Introducing a new method to have a bit of QED is always really
Hmm.
nice because the Mantis is an incredible tool, 20-kilometer bubble. However, the problem is it's made of paper mache, which somehow is usable in space. So give yourself a bit more of a
Yeah.
fight is a
This is
really nice little feature.
this is a question for you though, with your because you've got more of a combat head on. Sort of, are you not hoping for QED on something a bit sturdier than a fighter?
I I think the knee jerk reaction is yes.
Mhm.
That'd be really awesome. If you could have, the thing we always theory crafted is why can't I put a mantis in a Idris and then
Mhm.
turn on the dampener, right? In theory, sounds awesome. If I have one on my team, if there's a Polaris-sized QED on the enemy team, it's like, well, we're never going to be able to kill this. So unless they balance it in such a capacity where you can run away from it, it somehow maybe loses speed. I think it could be opening a can of worms, which would be fairly tricky to close. Long
I do.
term, definitely.
Yeah, I do wonder because I often thought the Perseus sort of chassis would be amazing for
Mm,
for an alternative QED. Like maybe you give up a lot of the gun on the Perseus, but you get a more tanky Corvette-sized QED ship.
yeah,
Because you just sort of think Mantis, sort of Cutlass Blue to an extent, the Guardian. Try and stop my Idris running away. Try and stop a javelin running away. That sort of thing. So when we do get to the point of, because if you get to the point of like having proper capital ship fleet battles, how do you stop an enemy capital ship fleet running
yeah,
away? And I think balancing it around speed is probably a really good idea. Yep, this is, if you stick it on something which is faster than big cap ships like Idris's, Polaris's, Javelins, but slower than your medium sized ships and your fighters. So you can't just get a bully going around with, look at my, this is my pairing of a tanky QED ship and an Idris, and you're stuck in the room with us and we're going to hunt you down. So,
mm,
sorry, we tangent.
yeah. It's the best bit about a podcast, and then everyone's got to listen to it. What a legend! Um, so you know, the real big thing I think about the first 4.0 patch was it was introducing lots of cool ideas, but nothing back concrete at this time. And this is where the 4.1 came in, at least my opinion. It's where we actually started to really fill up the game. So the one which sort of blew me away more recently, this was actually during my hiatus in the game because the 6 months I think has been rocky for a lot of people. I don't think there's many people who have played for 6 months sustainably, given the speed of content at times has been limited. But actually, looking back, you realize how much has changed. So the huge stickler for me now is Wicklow. So Wicklow just seems to be this incredible method of encouraging people to go out into the verse, do certain missions, get certain materials, and get some really, really cool rewards, such as a Polaris like we did recently.
Yeah. I, I think Wicklow is, I would sort of prefix it with, I think as a concept, it's incredibly good and incredibly good for the game. Um, I think it's gap fill crafting, essentially. Because if you look at sort of how crafting mechanics work in survival games, that sort of thing, it's essentially, take this item and this item and this item, and together in these quantities, they will make another new item. You will destroy the underlying pieces, and you will get one of something out the other end. And quite often they will involve a crafting machine. So we saw like the fabrication machines as part of the crafting presentation at SitCon. And this is kind of smoke and mirrors that. So, all of Wicklow's missions, and some people, when I've said in the past that it's crafting, some people have been like, oh no, like, because he's asking you to bring him junk. It's like, it doesn't matter what the constituent components are. It's just, the freight elevator system hides that they don't have a crafting machine in yet. And essentially what we provide to Wicklow, it doesn't matter. It's still testing that system of like, these are the ingredients for the craft. You send them down. it comes back up. The game knows to create you one of this and destroy all those other items that you stuck down the elevator, rather than sending them to your inventory by mistake, that sort of thing.
Mm.
So yeah, from that perspective, I think it's incredibly good. But then all the known bad stuff, because it is gap fill to a degree.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think there's probably unavoidable bad stuff. The mission system probably had to be used for it because they didn't have anything else that could do it. So fair enough. But then, I mean, I made an entire video about the RNG crap, basically, on Spectrum Post,
yeah,
and it's just like, I particularly when they have not balanced these particularly well. So like some of the crafts require really too much resource and too much time and effort. Some of them are super easy, but like when you've done one of the ones which is been quite a mission to go and gather the stuff, I find like the RNG for Wicklow's ships for like 3 of the missions that offer him ships. Yeah, the Polaris is the only mission where it's like you will get a Polaris,
definitive answer. Yeah,
and then the other ones are sort of categories, and it's RNG,
mm.
which is frustrating because it's particularly when the categories are not particularly, they don't make that much sense. There's
Yeah,
one
that's very
which
true.
offers like 2 versions of an F8. So it's like F8C with mil spec components, F8C with stealth spec components. Then the other 2 ships in that list are a Star Lancer Max and a Connie Taurus. And so, imagine us two
Nice.
going and handing that in. I probably want something like the Connie Taurus. Nobody wants the Star Lancer Max, I'm sorry.
No, no,
You probably want the F8.
yeah,
But like we're just rolling the dice, and like I've got a 25% chance. You've got a 50% chance, as long as you don't mind switching the components, that sort of thing.
mm. Yeah,
But it's just like, and we've both got a 25% chance of ending up with that Star Lancer for what is a lot of effort, for the recipe that's there. So yeah, that's that sort of thing. I'm like, think that's a little bit iffy about it, but overall, it's easy to get down the road of like, this is wrong and this is wrong and this is wrong. But actually, the system, and I love that he wants jank as well. I love that he wants random
yeah,
space junk because it's a reason to go look for it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and it creates. So one we slightly missed, sorry, was the second phase of Supply or Die, which I thought was amazing because it forced us to go out and like look for different materials which we'd never bothered to look for before. Like mining meta sank in so much that it was like, people focusing on like 3 to 4 materials. But then all of a sudden everybody was looking for where's the best place to mine tin? Where's the best place to mine ice? Bulky commodities in large numbers to make lots of money. And I think Wicklow has done similar things in terms of, we when we do mining nights now, we don't sell the Quantanium to the TDD. We sell it to other players.
Mm.
Or we turn it into Polaris bits and we sell those to other players. So it's generated this extra layer of economy in the game. And you can find a Tavaran War Medal in pristine condition. You can choose to put it in your pocket, or you can choose to put it up on UEX for like 40 million credits. So my check every blue box you see. That's my hot tip.
Do you know? It just dawned on me that I picked up one of those yesterday during a worm event, and I didn't give it a second thought. I know it's in my backpack somewhere in obituary, but I saw
If
that.
you've got a pristine one, you're sat on a cash mine.
Oh, I was beginning to enter negotiations, I believe. Yeah, no, that's yeah. I remember seeing it, thinking, "Oh, cool." So Wicklow, what was that? It said just came in about 2 weeks before I came back from my break. So the main hype had disappeared. I sort of caught the tail and was like thinking, okay, I can kind of see what's going on here. The more I saw it, actually, it sort of reminded me of, I don't know why, it reminded me of engineering in Elite Dangerous, and not from the actual, give these materials and you'll get buffs or whatever. But being forced to go out and find just slightly more obscure things to bring to basically to get something you want at the end. And you're dead right. The RNG should never be like that. I think when we get a much better level of uh, effectively Elite Dangerous engineering, oh, I'm getting an F8C definitely, but this one's going to be, between -5 and +10% better than a standard F8C for whatever reason. And yeah, I think that's where we'll actually see a system which is a lot more enjoyable long term. Part of my feeling with these sort of events is I think they're perfect time sinks, which in reality every game needs. That's why I build games so they can basically have a time sink. But yeah, RNG is never that fun, especially when you work so hard for something. And it's all well and good saying, okay, well, you definitely can get your Polaris, but why is it fair to guarantee a Polaris if you're not going to guarantee your F8C or your Taurus or whatever?
Yeah, I think though, sort of like in the contested zone side of things, it works because
Yeah,
with the contested zones and the exec hangers, I think having RNG there does actually work, even if I think Ravnak got a Sulan twice or something like that. It was, but you're always getting something because you're getting good components on it. So if nothing else, you're getting good component stock. But the reason it works there is we're in a PvP situation right up until the last moment. There can be a situation where you do all the stuff to unlock the executive hangar, but somebody else comes in behind you and snipes you before you get to that terminal to
yeah,
actually claim the ship. And so it's fair then that it's RNG. Because why should I choose the ship I want? But then, you successfully won the PvP encounter and capped me in the head. And then you get to the desk and you're like, he picked this ship. I didn't want this. Like, so, and it's also cool in that situation because you can always give it to your friend. We've had a couple of runs where we've done hand-ins for the exec hanger cards, and then the person who's handing it in has got to the terminal and been like, I already have a cutlass. I don't need another exec cutlass. One of the people who's helped them get to that point
mm,
has then just been given the ship because you can just go, I don't need this. One of you take it. Great. Whereas with the Wicklow ones, you are just stuck with it. It's yours.
yeah.
Even if
Take it or leave it.
even if it's the 5th Star Lancer Max you just claimed.
I'm sure there's someone out there on Reddit who's got quite a few in a row. Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. Next one in 4.1, which I think personally my favorite feature that CIG's released in the last 6 months. I'll be really interested to see what you think and actually what most people think of this one. And that was teaser of item recovery. So for me, this was huge. We run, or at least do, sort of 2 PvP events a week. And the worst bit about a PvP event is having to get your gear set up and then you die. I mean, even if you're doing like a little bit of training, right? So you're going to die over and over again in this. And every time you then have to pack a box, bring all this gear down to the planet, put it back on. Out you go, oh, I forgot something from my standard loadout. Or, the guns fall through the floor of the planet, etc., etc. Item recovery. When I die, my guns, my ammo, anything on my belt, any gear I'm wearing will stay with me. This is genuinely just the best thing that has happened to this game. And I can imagine there's definitely people who think this is rubbish. I can't loot people's guns right now. And I agree. That's incredibly frustrating. But the bigger picture of, to be honest, just time saved more than anything, an actual diversity we now have in the game in what people wear is just absolutely incredible. Like you go down to another worm site last night, and there's people running around in like neon yellow armor, which you'd never wear that usually. That's a subscriber armor for $15. Once you're dead, it's gone. But nope. Now you actually want to wear it. You want to be a little bit proud of what you own, what you found, what you've crafted, or vaguely crafted. Yeah, I just truly, truly love it.
So I am on board. I
Nice.
think it is absolutely fantastic, and I think it is. I I'm going to say did you ever, but I'm pretty sure everybody watching this will say yes. Did you ever have a night where you were playing Starset, you had about an hour left before you were going to clock off anyway, and then you did nothing wrong but your ship exploded with you on board,
Hmm.
and you woke up in the med bay in that medical gown without your gear, and you just called it a night. Just like, nah, okay, escape, exit to menus. I will deal with, or maybe like sometimes I basically went and re-geared, used the rest of my play session to re-gear, and then I clocked off early because I didn't go and start. But like, I'm not going to start doing the thing again. I'm just going to leave myself in a position where I'm ready to play again tomorrow. And I did that so many times. Particularly like if you're trying to make a video or you try to do something with your friends or that sort of thing. It's just frustrating. And that frustration has just gone. Because now I don't do that anymore. I'm just like, oh, stuff happens. Be a bit PG. But like now I'm just gonna go and claim a ship. Most of the time you're doing stuff around a station, you make sure you've got a spare ship claimed anyway. You just back out in like 2 minutes. And that means that you don't escape exit to menu. Which is huge. I mean, it needs refining. It's there's part of me gets annoyed sometimes at some things like the infinite respawning PvP situation.
Yeah, you
Like
can infinitely rearm ammo, basically. Yeah.
that's a little bit naff. But the general experience for the most people. I mean, I might offend some people by saying this. I don't care at all that you can't loot somebody's gun.
Mm.
Don't care at all. Don't think people were doing it that much anyway. Don't think that was like in the average player's day. Picking up people's guns who they just killed. So what? Just like and also like you would never. You might look at somebody in their like cool armor with their cool gun and think, wow, beat the desk. Why can't I loot that? If you
Yeah.
could loot that, that person would never be carrying it.
Is that? Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah.
If you could loot it, you wouldn't loot it because it wouldn't be a shiny cool gun. It would be an absolutely basic P4. Because like that's what we all used to have, right? We used to have our standard gun, we used to have factory issue, and we used to have 20 or 30 of them stacked up with all the components we used at the location that we called home. So
Yeah.
I think it's better that you get to put more effort into customizing your weapons, your gear. I think it's so cool that everybody has armor on that looks like nobody's running around in a noob suit anymore
Mm.
or a tactical medical gown. So
Air rating, just air rating.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think actually some of the racers do still use the tactical medical gown, but that's because it makes you go faster in it.
I
So
see. It's lighter. Yeah, it's much lighter.
yeah.
Carbon fiber, gown. Yeah.
Slight anything for a slight thrust edge is
So to speak. Yeah, I mean, so I know we're looking retrospectively today. Let's maybe look a little bit into a hypothetical future. Can you see a time at which point this level of item recovery is a hindrance to the game? Or do you think this is a change that's come in that actually should stay forever, so to speak? Well, let's say in its current format, just keep it nice and easy to begin with.
yeah. So I like immersion in games. I think it is important. However, I don't think it should ever be. I'm not here for a sim. I'm here for a game.
Yeah.
So I don't mind things which are a little immersion breaking, sneaking in if they greatly improve the player experience. I think item recovery in its current form, I don't think it needs to change one bit for the safe system starting areas where most new players are going to end up. in a version 1 of the game. I don't think, like, maybe for immersion's sake, there's a little bit of like you wake up in the med gown, but then there's a little box at the end of your bed, and it's like, Terra Medical Rescue has retrieved you, and we were nice enough to bring back all your stuff as well. Like, here it is. So you can just pop it all on immediately and just get back out to what you were doing. Because for new players, who are the most likely people to have an accident while they're trying to land their ship, or like just find many, many ways to kill themselves. Let's face it, we all did when we were new
Yeah,
players.
yeah,
There's a lot of ways to kill yourself in Star Citizen. So for those areas, I think it should basically just be what it is now. Get all your stuff back, get back out there. And I do wonder whether then it's a case of, as you progress through systems into increasingly lawless territory, that level of, the level of rewards on offer are higher, but the level of risk you're taking with everything, including your gear, are also scaled up. Until the point that you get to like nullsec type areas, where maybe there is no item recovery at all. Everything you take in is at risk. And the possibility of maybe item insurance offers another possibility of a cash sink for the game, which you do need as you progress to just prevent inflation in the game.
yeah, definitely. And I think for me, I lean more the way of item insurance. I definitely agree in what Stanton will be in the future when we have more systems. Yeah, you die there, you get your gear back, absolutely fine, not a problem at all. I think it would be cool if you effectively could buy, you know, your armor's worth 50k. Okay, I can buy like 10 insurance chips. So it forces you to actually go back and buy more chips. So every time you die, you lose one. You basically you have to rebuy more insurance tokens. So it's just a method of stopping people spam respawning with the same gear in a medbed somewhere. I mean, part of me wonders, is that sort of touching on what you're saying with the Terror Society brings your gear back to you, Terror Rescue brings your gear back. Well, if you're respawning back of your Ursa Medivac, what, how on earth are they going to get the gear to you there? If it's not an
Yeah.
assist, it's not on a station. But even saying that, I'm so hesitant to say anything about changing the current system because it's it's actually, to be honest, it's just made the game enjoyable. Really, it just means you spend less time in admin getting ready to do something, and you can just do the thing. So
I
yeah,
think there is an element of like loss does give some let's just say you find a blueprint for a really good P4AR. I'm just going to keep saying P4AR because it's my favorite gun. Although the Volt rifle is coming out pretty close right now.
it's so good.
But let's say you find like a really good blueprint for a P4AR and you start making them in your little crafting factory. That's your goal. Your goal of your little org is like you make good guns. You can then only sell one gun to one person.
Yeah.
Maybe you might come along with all of Frontier Legion to equip and say, I'd like to put in an order for 100 guns or 200 guns. Cool, but then they fill that 200 gun order. Unless, one of our people leaves that gun down randomly, it's,
Later, pub.
they have that gun forever. That's that sort of thing. So I think there is an economic incentive to have, there's some interesting economic gameplay to be had with people who are maybe supplying, if there is a war going on between two orgs, you kind of want that to be those orgs are having to lose resources, therefore they're having to
Yeah.
rebuy stuff. Then you create the situation where the profiteers come in. They're like, these two sides are fighting a lot over here in this system, so if we could ship lots of guns over there, they will be going through them like
Mm.
there's no tomorrow. So, but whether that sort of economic gameplay should trump the experience of the average player, who's probably not going to necessarily be involved in that side of the game. I don't know. So I think I just hope they realise, because there was quite a lot of drama about this when it first came out, right? I hope they realise that probably most people like it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the age old question, and it's definitely one we'll touch on the next subject of, you know, do people? I'm sure they do, but is the wider opinion sometimes outweighed by a minority? Not always, but sometimes minority who speak loudest on sites such as Spectrum, Reddit, etc. YouTube, could be any really. Um, and I think the one that caused quite a bit of drama at the time was a Line of Mine. So really cool event. Initially advertised or to set the scene, a Line of Mine. Effectively, you have to go down to sites, grab key cards. Key cards unlock batteries. Bring batteries to a giant space station. Put the batteries in. Fire a laser. Go mining. That was a 5-second, fairly shoddy synopsis of that event. But this was initially sold as a PvE event because it was in Stanton and the comma rate was up. So surely no one's going to be naughty and want to risk a crime stat 3. And it's sort of an ongoing question mark in the game of, PvP is becoming very prominent, for better or for worse. It's sort of an area where it can be fairly tricky to avoid. Actually, I think it's harder to avoid PvP than it is to find it. So definitely right now in the game. But the event itself was a great opportunity to actually get a dynamic group of people together because you were suddenly having to get people who enjoyed ground combat, air combat, absolutely. And then at the end of it, you had to bring in people who like mining. Now,
Yeah,
I didn't know they existed, right? But like
they do.
people do it for
They're
fun.
very elusive, but yeah,
It's just bizarre concept to me. Um, yeah,
I'll be
forever it
honest.
shall be.
I think Hathor, a line of mine, is probably. I've been doing a lot of the worm. We'll come on to the worm because it's the
Oh
new
yeah,
thing and it's cool. But I think I love Hathor. I think it's great, and I think it really does actually work as a PvP VE type situation.
yeah,
It's open. We've had some really good, almost reminiscent of the very good times at Jumptown type situations
yeah,
round that site. And I'll be honest, it's just very good looking. All the build up. I like the look of the sites, and it's cool when you see the gave me some GoldenEye vibes. I
yeah.
reckon they took some sound cues out of the original GoldenEye, the final levels of that. When the satellite dish is open and align, and then when that laser fires, it's just like, if you haven't seen it in a video, I don't know how you haven't seen it in a video, but just go and see if you can find a group and do it because that is, and it's just awesome. Um,
It's amazing.
However, it does sort of speak to a lot of the problems with the Wicklow stuff when it first came out. Because when the Wicklow stuff first came out, it was 50 Karenite to a favor, and you needed a lot of favors for anything from Wicklow.
Yeah.
And that basically, I think that's why Wicklow just immediately flopped in the beginning. It was just like the demand of what was needed. It was basically just like, this is only for large orgs.
Mhm.
Because this isn't even like, you can go and control the site one night and then actually turn it into something useful. It was way beyond that. And
Yeah, and I
I
think
know some people have managed to get through Hathor ordering small groups, and particularly now that like we've got bigger servers, more to do. But it does sort of like, it's quite easy for large orgs to sort of corner the market in Aranite, Soldinium, Jacklium, since it's the only four places that it spawns. So
mm, and that's sort of been it's become a sort of larger issue recently, especially with a ship that came out slightly later, which we'll come on to properly later, but the Idris. When the Polaris came out before this event was a thing, it was definitely dominant and definitely a ship you had to have on site. However, the Polaris still had a few sort of weak points and required a larger crew to really be effective.
mhm.
The Idris has introduced this new problem where one ship, one player, one railgun can effectively stop most people from getting to the site in a proper manner. So it's a problem I'm seeing a bit of the worm event. God, we're really teasing this at this point. I mean, I can't wait till we say it was shit. It's bad. Forgive me. But as a concept, the event's really good. It just needs more work on how do you balance these events so that everyone can get involved. I think we've seen that more of new events having a lot more
Mhm.
locations you can go to. Just to mean actually, there's less chance of running into one dominating group. Mine Online had, I believe, 4 locations you could do it in. So there was a chance you could find one that didn't have a Polaris and Idris hang over it. But you're dead right. Large dogs can absolutely dominate these events, and it sort of just gets you in a bit of a bind.
Yeah. Well, I just think the important thing is just spreading out the resources.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
don't think there is anything wrong at all with some things being, the big orgs maybe control them. I know people might say I have a vested interest in
Wait,
saying
really?
that, but like there does have to be gameplay to inspire big orgs. Star Citizen as a game has a lot of large organizations, and I think we do need to, an extent, get out of this mindset of like we can't have that because that's just for big orgs. No, star bases are not going to be built by anything but big orgs.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Like the amount of resources that's going to go into it, it's you know that's unfortunately going to be an end game goal for large organizations, and there will be things within the game which are just like, yeah, if a large org has turned up first, then you probably won't get a look in, because there should be stuff which is PvPvE. It's cool. It's fun gameplay if that's what you're into. So I do think that therefore it needs to also follow through to the rewards that you get out of that thing should also only really be the things that big orgs need, not the things
Okay.
that
Yeah.
everybody needs. So and that was why like the Hathor gems were so bad in the beginning, because it's like they were needed in everything. Like every craft from Wicklow needed Hathor gems, and those things were like a cool bit of armor, a cool gun,
Big
and
org only.
like a little ship, like a little ship with some cool components. And those sort of rewards, they're aimed at like single players,
Yeah.
small organizations, and then they required a resource which you could only get from that particular site. It was just like that's not right. If it was but if you tied the two things together right, if it was like this event is probably going to require you to bring a substantial org to control it and get the resource out. What's the resource used for? Building star bases. Then it would kind of be, it's a pipeline, right? It's like
Yeah.
this filters into an objective which is only really reasonable for a big org anyway. So I don't care because I'm a solo player. Didn't
Yeah.
want to build one of those anyway.
That's it. I was led to believe my account with 50 game packs could have a whole NPC crew, and I could build a space base by myself. Breaking news. That's
If you learn to
maybe not possible. Who
multi-box,
knew?
you learn to multi-box really well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've got 2 hands and 2 feet. That's 4 keyboards at least. So
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
halfway there, really.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
can probably start running like Orion's, just
100%. Yeah,
with like
why
5
not?
screens, lots of
Yeah, yeah.
keyboards.
Yeah, easy way to go. So another great event in 4.1 was Hunt the Polaris. A really cool way of encouraging the whole server to come together to fight one ship. My camera is getting darker and darker here. To come together and fight one ship at the same time. It's a really nice idea of actually saying, do you know what? This is only about killing the NPC ship. There are literally zero benefits for shooting any of the players. There's zero need for PvP. Just by the way, while you're at the site, everyone's going to turn red, and no one's going to have a name tag, right? but don't kill the players because I'll give you a crime stat. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Oh, and oh, the other people will also own a Polaris, and they will also be red. So just find the right one because that tag telling you which ship to attack will bug out.
Yeah.
But have a great time.
Bring back just seeing player tags
Yeah,
on
yeah,
ships. It was just like, because that was like a saving factor of Xenothreat, right? When
yeah,
Xenothreat was
yeah.
on, I remember saying that in every guide. I remember saying it in every pre-talk before we went into, a Xenothreat as an org. It was just like, right, people are going to turn red because they just happen to, you flew across their guns. And then they're going to turn red. That's just hostility chevron. They're not really hostile. If they start shooting down people like aggressively, then yeah, we'll take them out. But other than that, look for the names which don't have spaces, because then you can identify players from NPCs.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, yeah. But the overall idea behind Hunt the Polaris is great, and most of the time I saw it working as intended. Aside from the accidental shootings of the accidental people who shot people, is aside from that, creating that objective where my reward doesn't get impeded or impaired by the fact that I share it with you, random player that I've never met before. We know what we're here to do. We're here to kill that Polaris. We are inspired to work together, as opposed to, some of the slightly delusional thinking at CIG about how we're going to work together. I thought this
Oh
one
yeah,
actually worked really
with the
well.
big call.
And it also went hand in hand with all the other, like, mercenary patrol and ambush stuff, and just so I held off saying that I agree that tier 0 item recovery is the best thing that happened, because I think
Okay,
MG script and council script was actually the best thing that happened. Just
interesting.
because I think it was so sorely needed in terms of, like, this is another route into all of this Wicklow stuff. This is the PvE route. This is the solo player friendly route. This is the opposite end of the scale to, the Karenite and the Jactium and stuff. This is just everybody can get it. And I was so glad because it was taken away in 4.2 PTU. Like, they changed it over, so they made it so that disappeared and new recipe for favors. But I think the either they didn't intend that to happen, or the feedback got to them and they U-turned.
Yeah, yeah.
Which was just incredibly sensible to do, because it's just so important as, like, providing people with access to this stuff. And also, I just think it's great content to have on tap. We can always just take a Gilly level 8 mission and go and fight a Polaris.
Mm.
Which is just great content to have, because previously, the best PvE fight you could get was with a Hammerhead, since they took out
Yeah.
the Idris missions.
Well, it was a hammerhead, or you could sometimes get an 890 jump or reclaimer, which are
Yeah,
really fun to fight. They're not time sinks when you're trying to make AUC. They're
yeah,
engaging fights. Yeah,
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 yeah. It definitely doesn't inspire you to just, what is highest DPS ship?
yeah. Yeah, everyone's running around in a Corsair, and then
Yeah.
they nerf the Corsair because it's the only thing that can actually do them properly.
Mhm.
What a shock! So 4.1 was a real turning point in general. Ship wise, we had the Atlas Geo, which sort of had to come along because Mine the Lion was a thing. So you need a better vehicle to get into there. Even though you can actually get a few ships in, I don't even get any mining ships in. Um,
I know,
it
and
was a
and
great
also just
golem.
gems. You could get all the gem miners in though, get like the rocks
Okay,
down there. But it's it takes some work to get a rock in. You got to bring like your tractor beam and lower it down and all
right.
that sort of stuff. Whereas it's just slightly more convenient when, like, this other mining vehicle has like a jetpack. That's cool. Oh, and you can also, like, mine large gems and small hand mineable gems. kind of perfect for that cave. That suspiciously perfect, you might say. But yeah,
We should just let the consumer decide, but they have free choice. Whatever they want, it's all there.
yeah.
Uh,
You can use your rock though. Don't worry.
yeah, please, by all means, if you can get it in there. Yeah, and so I mean, the only ship I really want to touch on in 4.2, 4.1, apologies, is the Idris. That was the Idris we have. We know it's not the final complete model. Um, I don't think that matters for me. This is exactly what we've been asking for years. The game is now in a position where there is enough to do and enough relevance to bring in a ship large enough to sustain an org in a capacity to say, we're going to go do an op. We can have backup ships on board. We can actually effectively live off the grid uh, and have some proper dominant firepower in an area. I would say it's come with the sad caveat that now an Idris is quite mandatory on a lot of events. So for a lot of things I've been doing recently, if you don't have an Idris, the enemy team do. And actually, to make it worse than that, if you don't have an Idris with a railgun, which means, presumably, unless you have an Idris M, it's been duped from somewhere. It's it's really unfortunate to see, to be honest, because the fights are actually now quite stale. To kill a cap ship, you need a cap ship, but you need one gun on the cap ship. So it's I'm hoping the Perseus may bring some sort of variety. It may force a change in how fights are led, but not being funny, that thing is not going to last super well unless I mean, it's got size 8 guns, but it needs to be able to outmaneuver an Idris, which should be possible, assuming Idris has no friends to fight it a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. It's sort of that thing of like there are ways to counter an Idris
Yeah,
with even one which I saw the other day was 6 people turning up in like ions,
yeah.
and clearly sort of their group had practiced using ions in like a concerted manner, flying them as a proper wing, focusing down the shields, and then sort of let other people start wailing on it. And I was watching this video that I saw, but then I was just thinking to myself, you know, that's impressive, and it's good that you have used things which are bought in the game to counter this cash bought thing that is, you know, I'm I'm edging around the term pay to win because I know it gets me in trouble. But I think it was cool that they did that. But at the same time, it was like 9 of them. And
yeah.
so it's like, how many people do you have to bring to counter one person?
Because it can be one person and be
Yeah,
fully operational effectively.
yeah, and particularly with the point defense
Yeah,
systems, I'm sure like I was short a bit of cash at the end of last patch, and so I was just filling some of my evening hours just going round in my Idris, one-shotting the hammerhead on the Gilly level 7 mission, and then letting
classic.
my point defense turrets take care of the 2 fighters that came zipping around me like gnats. You could just make 200k every 3 minutes,
Mhm.
and the script. So like, but you put that into a PvP situation, and it's like one pilot. Yep, there are ways to deal with it. There are vulnerabilities, but it's going to take a lot more than one other person, unless that one other person is also flying an Idris with a
Yeah,
railgun. Like, it's that is somewhat problematic. So
yeah. It needs work. It needs work, and I don't think it's an easy fix. Sadly, I think it's to me you either nerf the Idris massively to the point where, yeah, I think well, even then, what are you going to do? You're just going to take away its shields effectively. It just needs
I
engineering.
do wonder about engineering. Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. Just like every time I fire that railgun, there's just a chance of a misfire,
yeah,
and there's a chance that it's sort of without people on my ship to look after it, without it being sort of limited by needing a proper multi crew. There's big risks to me just flying it around on my own,
yeah.
which that's been a ongoing problem in SC, hasn't it? Like
Yeah, yeah, always has been.
big ships, single pilot. If the pilot controls the guns, then that is always going to be an issue.
Mhm. So I think there's actually only really one more topic, and it's the next patch that came after 4.2, and it was after 4.1, and it was called 4 Stormbreaker 2, because 4.2 was literally, to me at least, from what I've been able to work out, one event which has had a few little bolt-ons along the side. So, I mean, first of all, rain. Rain, wind, turbulence, thunder. Oh my gosh. This
Yeah,
it's doesn't change the game really, but looks incredible and runs so well.
yeah,
You know, my
yeah.
PC is quite old and it is smooth. Like I don't know how they've done it, but I
Uh,
love it.
but it just looks incredibly good. Yeah. The one thing which I saw it in a brief moment before I hit F12 the other day to close global chat. Somebody asked, when windscreen wipers? Because sometimes it is genuinely like when you're flying through one of these storms, you're just like, so weather is a thing. My ship is like some serious hardware. I mean, it's got a gravity generator in it. Like that's some high-end technology right there. You didn't think though that torrential rainstorms might be a problem for pilot visibility and have some way to deal with that. So
Well, fine, yeah.
just ping a lot with tab, right? Just ping a
Yeah.
lot and don't hit
Every
the
Drake
ground.
ship just provide a squeegee at point of sale. There you go. Get
Yeah,
outside, just like
yeah,
wash
exactly.
down, cool. Another kilometer, do it
Well, that's
again.
that's the
Easy.
Drake ship solution, but what about Origin,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Origin, I mean, I don't know what the law is for Origin. I know in Elite Dangerous, all the fancy ones were like sort of made by slaves, so there was an easy joke
Yeah.
in there, but I'm not sure what the case is in
Origin
Origin.
would probably just pay the rain to stop, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, no, go away, please. Go away. Thank you. Yeah, that's much easier. But no, 4.2 was actually, as we've alluded to, the Stormbreaker event, which is, for people who may not have had a chance to play, effectively is an event about a worm. There's two phases. In the first phase, you have to impose it as a lab assistant, effectively, and grab a key card. In phase two, you go to a separate location, get on a train, steal an egg, a worm egg, and some reason decide I should wake up this 400-meter tall worm and see if it likes me. It's like a
But it's
very
got
odd
nice, it's
dating
got nice
show.
chompy teeth that I want. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
why
yeah.
I'm waking it up.
Yeah, like, have you flossed today? I must wake you and have a look.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, so still early days, but so far, I think the event has a few teething issues, but I don't want to focus on bugs because it's sort of rude to criticize a patch after a week, really. However, the concept I think is probably the the best event I'd say that CIG has done with some caveats. I'd like some more air parts of the event, but the actual getting people on the ground, forcing a bit of PvP, forcing this amazing battle to happen. I can't speak highly enough about the visuals.
The entire atmosphere of it is absolutely fantastic. It's got all those creepy vibes as well. I really love those creepy vibes of like the guys in the hazmat suits and sort of the added environmental pressure of radiation
Yeah,
is actually, you're making the choice, aren't you? Because it's like a heavy combat situation. So do I go in with heavy armor and get my added protection, my 40% damage reduction, my extra med pen slots, my extra ammo slots, or do I put on one of the exploration suits like the Sterling, vastly reduce my visibility, lower my damage reduction from gunshots, and have fewer med pens, but I'm going to avoid that radiation issue? You're forced into making these choices, which are actually meaningful, and it benefits as well. Sort of when you've got a group doing it, you split the roles, right? Like we were doing it the other night, and we had some people doing the rad suits, some people doing heavy armor. When a building had to be stormed because we'd got some PvP, You know, it was like try and form up the heavy armor squad to go and breach that building. But then when it came time to actually collect the stuff, I mean, I tried to walk up to the worm in Antium armor, and I just died. Just
Yeah,
like just
yeah.
keeled over, and just like no, too much radiation. So
Mm.
so those extra factors are really good, and yeah, I mean, I would say as a PVE event, to be honest, and I don't mind a bit of PvP. It's good fun. I would say as a PvE event, it's like 9 out of 10. It's a stellar event in my opinion. As a PvP event, I just don't think it's anywhere near as good as Hathor, for instance.
Yes. Yeah.
I think if you were designing this with PvP in mind, you kind of designed it badly
Mhm.
because one route into the site, like that's a choke point. There's nothing to be done about like unless you leave a good portion of your team behind just to patrol the air. And that portion of your team might literally get no gameplay for the entire session because they're just waiting at the site, like at the shuttle station. But if you don't leave that team there, then all your ships that you came in are going to be destroyed, and you're not going to have anything to extract the loot with. You have to come back for the loot. It's
Yeah.
so I think as a PvP event, it's 3 out of 10.
My its biggest problem I think it's one of its biggest bonuses is also its biggest problem, and that's the fact you can respawn at the site. So for PvE, awesome. Okay, I go down, get straight back in. The worst thing about Siege of Orison back in the day was dying and then being 20 minutes behind your friends on trams and getting caught in the next wave of enemies. This is amazing from the point of view you die at the final site fighting the worm, you're back in the action in 5 minutes or 5 seconds. Sorry, for PvP, so for context, I spent 90 minutes last night in a 2v2 scenario where two of us were, people just respawning forever and ever. We find each other, we kill each other. For what gain? So we don't have time to do the actual event because we're spending all our ammo, all our time killing each other. There's just nothing good to be had here. So yeah, I think that's it. I I would like to see some change from that point of view. So I look forward to seeing what CIG can think of, but I don't think that's an easy fix without killing the PVE bonuses that the event brings. I think my final suggestion to anyone who hasn't had the chance to play it yet and is going to is make sure your in-game music is on because the boss music, good lord. I mean, if you've got some decent headphones or like some Dolby Atmos set up for playing Star Citizen, crank it up. It's so sick.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah,
This is the
yeah.
one time I'm going to agree with you on the music on.
I love
It
the
is
music in the
good.
game.
It is good. I turned it back on. I turned it back on, but then I turned it right down. So I
Okay,
turned it
okay,
up for the
yeah,
boss fight with the worm. But the
yeah, nice.
one thing I wonder about, and I wonder if it's like it's not a solution to distribution of rewards, but it's a solution to people who don't. Because I know it's people's choice not to join an org. Like, let's be honest. Let's be adults. If your complaint is I'm a solo player or I play with my 3 friends and I don't want to play with anyone else, that is you made a choice there, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that is probably going to mean that all of the content of Star Citizen is not accessible to you.
yeah,
And if you want it to be accessible to you, maybe you have to make different choices, like joining an org and finding more friends. Start your own org. But I do wonder if some solution to at least making it so that because the point where I feel sorry is that these are people who paid money into the game and they paid the money for that thing to be made. And then
yeah,
the only way they can see it is on a YouTube video. Because every time they go with their 2, 3 friends to the site, they're just KOS'd.
yeah.
So I wonder if like the solution is stick it in Arena Commander as a level.
Okay, just so you can actually still try
Yeah.
it and enjoy it.
Can
Yeah.
you get a
Okay.
party together? I know, and I think I would also find myself playing that with like put together a party and launch up Arena Commander and play that because
Mm.
I'd just love to see it working with without all the resourcing issues of this is occurring in the PU, which undoubtedly like I was chatting to Ravnak the other night about it, and he was like, it's like it's not a particularly like hard fight though, is it? And I couldn't help but think, yeah, but it would be if more than 30% of the ads were actually firing at you.
Yeah, instead of
Like
just shaking
like
away.
and if the main worm was doing all of its like proper attacks, and at the
Yeah,
same time you've got guys from the facility coming at you from the back like with guns. So yeah, I mean like seeing it run with like mega server performance that
be
an
awesome.
instance like an arena commander would allow, I think could be really really cool and might be a short term way to basically say to people, you can experience it. You can
Yeah,
get this experience, so go for it.
yeah, no, definitely. Well, we have summarized everything CIG has ever achieved. No, okay, so I think that's given us sort of a very solid rundown of some of the highlights for last 6 months. I mean, there's, to be honest, tons of stuff we haven't touched on, but I think this is a great moment to encourage people who made it to the end to really shout out what actually you've enjoyed, because I think sometimes it's really difficult to not find yourself in an echo chamber of people who like the same parts of the game as you. So I think we'd love to hear what is it that's got you back into the game, what is it that's kept you into the game, and what would you like to see next, what would you like to see improved.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
Loud.
it. I mean,
If
there was just stuff that was on our list that
mm,
we couldn't cover. And
no,
and
yeah,
I think any time doing stuff like this, it's always a bit when you sort of take a step back from it, when you're not just this is a game I play every day or every couple of days, every week. It doesn't seem like too much changes and it doesn't seem like too much gets accomplished. But then when you actually sort of step back and go, wow,
good
we've been
lord.
chatting away for more than an hour, and that was the 6 months, and that was we didn't touch on everything on our list, and our list probably didn't include everything. There was probably just stuff we
No,
forgot off the list to begin with. So it would be great to hear, like Ben said, what were your highlights, and yeah, take you a bit of time to sort of step back from it and look back over 6 months. Is like, wow, that was actually I had a sense of like that was quite an impressive 6 months actually.
yeah, I think so. I think so. Probably the most development I can remember. That's
Mhm.
actually substantial development you can actually play and enjoy. Yeah, definitely. Well, if people have got to the end of what will now be our longest podcast and think, I really wish I could hear Loud Guns voice for longer, where could they go?
Certainly, you will. I will do the thing where they are above and below. But you will find me mostly on YouTube. 99% on YouTube. I'm determined to do a Twitch stream now, just to
I was going
be
to say
like,
this.
ha, I did one.
This is the first podcast you weren't going to mention the Twitch. I was going to be shocked there. No, no.
And how about yourself, Ben?
Yeah, so on YouTube, MasterBen10, and Twitch the same, Twitch TV/MasterBen10. So yeah, why not come along?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And please do feel free to subscribe to this channel. I noticed that it is approaching the 1,000 mark. So
Going to be
that would be
overtaken.
really big for us. I think we've got some long-standing bet that will get Ben in a mining ship. So you
That
need
was
an
episode
added
3. We
incentive.
said something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
damn. I got to start making these bets.
That's taking the wind out of his sails.
Yeah, yeah. Right. Yeah, well, just
Oh
just
shit.
click off now. But yeah, no. Just want to say a huge thank you for everyone who's stuck with it and everyone who's listened. Yeah, we'll hope to see you in the next one.
Yeah, catch you then.